Hi guys, day 2, and we're going to read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, chapter 10. The family begins to starve, which is actually a pretty sad chapter. You're going to start feeling very, very, very sorry for Charlie and his family right now, but it's part of the book, so let's read it. Okay, during the next 2 weeks, the weather turned very cold and it began to snow. Just going to do a little camera adjustment there. Okay. It began very suddenly one morning as Charlie Bucket was getting dressed for school. Standing in the windows, he saw the huge flakes drifting slowly down out of an icy sky that was the colour of steel. By evening, it lay 4 feet deep around the tiny house, and Mr. Bucket had to dig a path from the front door to the road. After the snow, there came a freezing gale that blew for days and days without stopping. Oh, how bitter cold it was. Everything that Charlie touched seemed to be made of ice, and every time he stopped outside the door, the wind was like a knife on his cheek. Inside the house, little jets of freezing air came rushing in through the sides of the windows and under the doors. There was no place to go to escape them. Remember what his house was like, guys? It was full of holes on the walls. The 4 old ones lay silent and huddled in their beds, trying to keep the cold out of their bones. The excitement over the golden tickets had long since been forgotten. Nobody in the family gave a thought now about anything except 2 vital problems. 1, trying to keep warm. 2, trying to get enough to eat. There was something very cold about cold weather that gave one an enormous appetite. And most of us find ourselves beginning to crave rich, steaming stews, hot apple pies, and all kinds of delicious warming dishes. But because we're all a great deal luckier than we realise, we usually get what we want, or near enough. Charlie Bucket never got what he wanted, because his family couldn't afford it. And as the cold weather went on, he became ravenously and desperately hungry. Both bars of chocolate, the birthday one and the one Father Joe had bought, had long since been nibbled away. And all he got now were those thin cabbagey meals 3 times a day. Do you remember that they had cabbage soup 3 times a day? Twice a day for their food. The reason for this was that the toothpaste factory, which is the place where Mr. Bucket worked, suddenly went bust and had to close down. Quickly, Mr. Bucket tried to get another job, but he had no luck. And in the end, the only way in which he managed to earn a few pennies was by shoveling snow in the streets. But it wasn't enough even to buy a quarter of the food that 7 people needed. The situation became desperate. Breakfast was now just a single slice of bread, that's 1 for each person, and lunch was maybe half a boiled potato. So that's a potato that's cut down the middle. You get 1 piece of it. Slowly but surely, everyone in the house began to starve. And every day, little Charlie Bucket, trudging through the snow, I'm just going to have a little cup of coffee, guys. Even now I'm drinking cold coffee. Nothing's changed. On his way to school, Charlie would have to pass Mr. Willy Wonka's giant chocolate factory, and every day, as he came near it, he would lift his small pointed nose high in the air and sniff the wonderful smell of melting chocolate. Sometimes he would lay motionless outside the gates for several minutes on end, taking deep swallowing breaths as though he was trying to eat the smell itself. "That child," said Grandpa Joe, poking his head out from under the blanket one icy morning. "That child has got to have more food. Doesn't matter about us, we're too old to bother with. But that growing boy, he can't go on like this. He's beginning to look like a skeleton." "What can one do?" Grandma Josephine said miserably. "He refuses to take any of ours. I saw his mother, heard his mother, try to slip her own piece of bread on his plate at breakfast this morning. He wouldn't touch it. He made her take it back." "He's a fine fellow," said Grandpa George. "He deserves better than this." The cruel weather went on, and every day Charlie Bucket grew thinner and thinner. His face became frighteningly white and pinched. His skin was drawn so tightly over his cheeks that you could see the shapes of the bones underneath. It seemed doubtful whether he could go on much longer like this without becoming very dangerously ill. Excuse me. And now, very calmly, with the curious wisdom that seems to come so often to small children in times of hardship, he began to make little changes here and there to some of the things he did, to save his strength. In the mornings he left the house 10 minutes earlier, so he could walk slowly to school, and he didn't have to run. We all know running takes lots of energy. And he sat quietly in the classroom during breaks, during his lunch, resting himself while the others rushed outdoors and threw snowballs and wrestled in the snow. Everything he did now, he did slowly and carefully to prevent exhaustion. Then, sounds exciting. Then, one afternoon, walking home with the icy wind in his face, and incidentally feeling hungrier than he had ever felt before, his eye caught suddenly to something silvery lying in the gutter in the snow. Charlie jumped off the side of the footpath and bent down to examine it. Part of it was buried under the snow, but he saw at once what it was. It was a 50p piece. That's like a 50-cent piece, guys. But this is in England, so it's a pence. Quickly, he looked around him. Had someone just dropped it? No, that was impossible. No, because the way part of it was buried. Several people went hurrying past him on the pavement, their chins sunk deep into the collars of their coats and their feet crunching in the snow. None of them was searching for any money they'd dropped. None of them was taking the slightest notice of the small boy crouching in the gutter. Then it was his. It was his 50-cent piece. Could he have it? Carefully, Charlie pulled it out from under the snow. It was damp and dirty, but otherwise perfect. There he is. See, he's looking down in the gutter. He's found it. What's he going to do? A whole 50-cent piece. 50p piece. He held it tightly between his shivering fingers and gazing down on it. It meant only one thing to him at the moment. Only one thing. What do you think that was? If you were really, really hungry and you didn't have anything in your tummy, what would you go and do? If you said food, you're right. It meant food. Automatically, Charlie turned and began moving towards the nearest shop. It was only 10 feet away. It was a newspaper and stationery shop, the kind that sells almost everything, including sweets. And what could he do? What would he do? He whispered quietly to himself. He would buy one luscious bar of chocolate and eat it all up, every last bit of it, right then and there. And then the rest of the money he would take straight back home and give to his mother. That's the last bit. Oh, I wonder what he's going to do, what he's going to buy. A big wave to you guys. I hear someone was waving at me yesterday, so I'm waving back. I miss you. If you guys have got any questions or anything you want to tell me, just get Mummy and Daddy to tell me on Story Park, and I'll answer your questions here on my daily story, okay? I miss you guys. Ka kite anō.